Before we get started with today's show, I'm here to tell you about Brez Coffee Company, made by gamers for gamers right here on the Gulf Coast in Pensacola, Florida. Do you like light or medium roast? Then try the Necro Medium, Holy Grail Light, or Stamina Boost. Or if you're like me and prefer darker roast, try the Critical Dark or the Coup Slayer Mocha Roast. But what if you can't pick just one? Then try one of their specialty sample packs, perfect for an all-night gaming, or in the case of my fellow filmmakers, an all-night editing session. Forget about all the crappy coffee you've been buying at the grocery store and head on over to brezcoffeeco.com. Use the promo code DDE at checkout to get 10% off your order. Have you ever thought to yourself after listening to this podcast, why didn't Derek ask this question? Or why didn't he ask that question? I know I certainly have. Well, you get the chance to do that if you sign up for my Patreon at patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. You get the chance to ask guests of the show a question. If you're a fan of the top 5 list, you get the chance to vote on what the topic will be. You also get early access to episodes, accessibility to my film scripts, and so much more. And you can do so by heading over to patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. And we want to thank our Patreon, Tim Spivey. Thank you so much for your continued contributions to the podcast. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, where every week I take a look inside the world of film and television with those who have lived it and experienced it. I am your host, Derek Diamond, and coming up on today's show, you'll be hearing my conversation with actress and director Mika Boorem, who recently directed her first feature film, Hollywood.con, which you can find on Amazon Prime. And this was a really fascinating conversation to have, not only in the sense that this was her first feature that she directed, and she tells some great stories about the making of Hollywood.con, but she's been in the industry for a long time. She's been acting since she was 7 years old, and getting her insight into how the industry has changed since she got into it was really fascinating to me. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I had conducting it and being a part of it. And go check out Hollywood.con because it's a really fun and entertaining movie, which you'll hear all about momentarily. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Mika Boorem. Welcome back to the Derek Diamond Experience podcast, and this week I'm happy to welcome filmmaker Mika Boorem to the show. Mika, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking, like we're recording this in early June, and it's unusually cold out where you are in California. That's pretty crazy.
That's right. Like the California big coat when it hits 60 degrees. Shh, don't tell people in other places. I don't want people to hate on me for being cold and 60 degrees.
No, it's all good. You know, like some people, like I can't imagine living up in like Minneapolis or anywhere in the Northeast where it's like 60 is summer, is a hot summer for them. It's insane.
It's so impressive. It's so impressive that they get out there in the snow too in the winter. I did a film and we were in the Poconos Mountains in the winter. And that was an interesting experience because I hadn't spent that much time in the winter in forever, apart from like short trips. And we had cars. And so like, I remember like trying to scrape, but not garages, so like trying to scrape the ice off the car. And I was just like, wow, just adds a whole nother layer to getting out the door in the morning.
Yeah, I went to Nashville about a year and a half ago on vacation. It was around November. And I remember this was my fault for not really checking the weather, but I didn't know it was supposed to snow. So I walk outside because I stayed at an Airbnb. I walk outside and there's like a layer of ice on my windshield and the top of it's covered with snow. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh my gosh. I had a funny experience with Nashville just recently. So I was just there. And when I was there, it was very cold. And so I had a friend going a week later and I was like, my goodness, like make sure that you pack all cold weather clothes. So I guess he went and I got a call from him and he was like, I'm in my room. Everything's like 70 and 80. I don't have anything to wear. I'm blasting the air conditioner. I was like, oh, sorry.
Mother Nature does what Mother Nature wants to do.
That's right. We've got June gloom going on in California right now too, which is always interesting because I feel like it should be warm, but there's just like this marine layer of fog that kind of comes in, which is so interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like we were talking before we started recording and you told me that it was that low of a temperature. It blew my mind because you think of states like, Florida, where I'm located, and out in California, you think this time of year it's like prime summer weather. It's like not officially summer yet, but like the prelude to it's definitely there. So that's surprising.
It is surprising. People
So
coming out for their vacation, they're like, "Oh no, no."
So I'm excited to talk about your directorial debut, Hollywood.con, in just a bit. But I did want to ask you, because you've been in the industry for a long time. You started acting when you were 7 years old. What made you want to initially get into the acting industry?
Um, well, I was very young, so I think it's probably more my parents rolling stuff together than me at 7. Although I would like to say, like a little businesswoman with a briefcase. Hello, I'm here to work. Um, but yeah, so it was one of those things. I always enjoyed acting, and I think it's an interesting job to this day because you get to explore different time periods and different aspects of psychology and different cultures, and so that's all very interesting. And I mean, I was so young, it was one of those things where I started working and then progressively it kind of just the ball started rolling on that and I kept rolling in that direction. The first movie I did was this movie Education of Little Tree in Montreal that was produced by Robert Redford, and it was a historical piece, and so that was really cool. Just being more immersed in all of the history and wearing like the outfits from that time period, and all of that was really cool to me. Even at a young age, like I recognized how different it was to sort of be in these these like immersive experiences, which is so funny because it just like struck a chord. Like I love what are those called? Like when you go to the places and they do the reenactments, like
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, like any of the reenactment stuff, or if you go to there's a place like outside of Arkansas called Silver Dollar City, and like everyone wears the old outfits and everything. It's funny. I like love that stuff so much. So I wonder that part of that probably came from being on set since I was little. But so I mean, I just it just kept going and going, and ended up doing some really fun projects all over the world. Worked with some great people like Morgan Freeman and Along Came a Spider, and Anthony Hopkins and Hearts in Atlantis, and Charlize Theron and Bill Paxton and Mighty Joe Young, Michael Keaton and Jack Frost. Just lots of working.
That's fantastic. And it's crazy that since you were that young and you're still working in the industry, how have you seen it evolve over the years? I know you started when you were very young, but what have been some changes that you've seen throughout the industry as you've gotten older and have worked in it, for a longer period of time?
That's such a good question. Not everyone asks that question. That's such a good question. So there's been such a kind of different like a different perspective on film and TV, and then bleeding more into the streaming, and then that bleeding over into the internet stuff. So originally, as an actor, the film and television world were completely separated. And so it was like, if you were a film actor, you were a film actor. And if you were a TV actor, you were a TV actor. Like they didn't cross over at all. And it was almost like there was this hierarchy in it where they thought that audiences wouldn't want to, necessarily pay to see a TV actor in a movie, which is so crazy because now, you know what I mean? Like that stuff's all mixed up. And so eventually what started happening, so it was sort of like, it was like, you had to be very careful about, what television you did or what films you did. And so later on, though, then people started looking at it from a slightly different perspective, where they're like, well, if this person has this huge TV show, then they've got this big fan base, which is potentially worth, money and people coming to the theater because they really enjoy this person and connect with them. And so then they were like, well, and so then that started bleeding over where the TV actors were in film. And then you sort of got into this like phenomenal, which is still going on now, this phenomenal space where they were doing these limited series on TV and like HBO and these networks. And then so, you started having these major movie stars come in and do a limited television series. And so that was sort of something brand new. And like I just watched recently, I enjoyed it so much. I watched 2 limited series. I watched The Undoing with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, which was very good. That was on HBO, I believe. And then I watched The Third Day with Jude Law and Emily Watson on HBO too. And those are both limited series, with like these huge movie stars. But so then from there, it was the thing with streaming at first. So like when Netflix first came out, Netflix and streaming, and then Amazon and Hulu, which my new movie Hollywood.con's on Amazon. But when those first came out, people weren't quite sure what to make of them. And there was also the conflict of like, well, if streaming takes off too much, will it kill movie theaters? Like, do the actors even want actors with credits and clout, like, do they even want to support that platform? But then as we all know, Amazon and Netflix and all these spaces started developing really interesting projects that gave them the foundation to be what they are now. And then it's been an interesting thing too, because also as an actor, there was this space too, which is now kind of different, which was there was this whole thought process with like the internet and YouTube and like the way that you presented yourself online and like as a brand, that like as an actor, you didn't want to necessarily signify your personality in different directions. So that way you could like show up and be seen as any sort of actor or any sort of character in a movie, and it would be seamless versus someone, knowing about like, your personal life, if you like the color blue or purple or, where you eat dinner and all that kind of stuff. And so that was like a big thing for a while too. And then that sort of has started to go out the window. And so you see all these, very big established actors who, maybe now are doing like interesting videos on YouTube or doing these like AMAs on Reddit and like, kind of just opening themselves up on social media and having these followings. So it's funny because I feel like things just keep kind of opening up more and more and more. And so I always talk about, and I haven't seen this personally in my lifetime, but I always hear people talk about how they feel, like older people, they feel that the pendulum swings so far in one direction that eventually it kind of goes back in the other direction. And so now that everything's kind of opened up, with people, even these like big famous actors doing like the personality and the branding on the internet and all this stuff, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if that's still applicable, like where it could possibly go back in the opposite direction where, certain mediums are really elitist or like, people get really specific online. I don't know.
That's interesting because I haven't really thought of it in that way, about the pendulum swinging on one side, and then will, like one platform be considered like the A-list, and then you have another be the more like indie level social media platform. And that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what things hold with that. I do think that it's very cool though. Just like my own personal thoughts on it are that, now there's so many like different avenues, especially like as an artist, to connect with people. I think it's really cool. Like it's all opened up, it's not like specifically people doing publications just through magazines. You have the podcasts and the interviews, and then on social media, you can connect with people directly. The streaming service is so cool. For me, so I started out for the directing, so, I had my acting career. And then when I started wanting to developing directing, I started out doing short films. And short films are a great exercise and avenue to start developing like the whole directing world for me. But it's interesting because there's not that many, like most of the people who are interested in watching short films are people who are already like big film connoisseurs and film buffs. So the thing that's so cool about something like streaming is you get to a more generalized audience, like, like just people who like movies, people at home, like, not necessarily people, that are specifically like wanting to watch like the art house short film. So that's cool now too. And I'm hoping movie theaters will come back. I hope they'll come back full force.
No, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned that, because this conversation probably wouldn't be happening if not for streaming and the explosion of other content like podcasts, like indie films. You mentioning like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and now with HBO Max and other streaming platforms. Like it what I love about it is that it gives creators avenues and ways to showcase their work in ways that weren't available before. The downside to it is that there's just so much that's out there. I've lost count of the number of conversations I've had with people like, oh, have you watched this show on Netflix? Well, no, I haven't gotten around to it yet. But if you watch this on Amazon Prime, and they're like, no, I haven't got to it yet. Because there's just so much that's out there. But I would take that if it means giving creators the means to showcase their work.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting. So with Hollywood.con, we had what we wanted to do with our distribution. So the movie, like, the movie is so wacky. And it was such like a wacky, fun experience making it, because we filmed all over. We filmed in Guatemala, we filmed in Mexico, we filmed in Texas, we filmed in Arizona, California. Like, we filmed all over with this, which is so funny because it's such a grandscape, ambitious film for like an independent with all these locations. I was like, whose idea was this to go all over the place? But we wanted to do a sort of like different avenue for distribution on that too. So what we had originally set up, but things changed with the pandemic, is we originally we did a press tour through Mexico. So not last year with the pandemic, but the year prior. And then we were releasing it in the theaters in Mexico. We're going to release it in over 3,000 theaters there. And then after releasing it in Mexico, because there's so much Spanish in the movie, then we were going to bring it to the States and release it in the theaters in the United States. And then go to a streaming platform after that. And that was sort of like a different avenue for distribution, because generally people release domestically US first, and then they go to these international outlets afterward. But we just thought it would be really fun, since it's an independent movie, it's our movie, we get to make our own choices on it. There's no big studio head, that we would do it that way, and and just do it for a different avenue. But then with the pandemic, we were like, well, do we want to wait? How long do you want to wait to release the movie? And when will theaters open back up to full capacity? And the other question that comes into play too is, when they do open back up to full capacity, a lot of these studios have been hanging on to their $50 million, $100 million films, waiting to release them. Like when the movie theaters are back open at full capacity, like, there's going to be so many crazy movies in there. Like, it's going to be awesome. But it's also going to be hard for an independent film to come in and compete, with a $50 million film that's got, my goodness, who knows how much for press and advertising, and all the billboards and stuff. So that was the thing. We're like, okay, well, let's see. So a lot of people have ran through so much content right now because they've been at home. Like, these streaming sites are like, or these streaming platforms are buying, all these foreign films up, and people are starting to revisit these old TV shows that are great, but they've already watched them, like revisiting like Breaking Bad or like Friends or like whatever. And so like, what, I think this is a really good time for us to release it on streaming on a platform. People are home. Like, also the movie, there's nothing in it that is too offensive in any direction, and it's like easygoing, it's there's no politics, no religion, no real violence in it, no real guns in it. So it's just, you can just watch it and like relax, and like hopefully you connect to like a funny character, that makes you like just have a good time, and escapism with all these locations, get out of the house. So that was our idea with it. We're like, okay, I think it's a really good time to release it on Amazon. And so that's what we did. It's worked out super well. It's funny because it's like, it's been doing like in the UK, like especially well, which is like very like random because I'm like, I didn't think we were specifically making any sort of like UK humor, but I'm happy with that. That's cool.
Well, I think if I had to guess, I think it's probably because it's so unique to the UK. Like there's nothing that makes you think UK when you're watching the movie. So if I'm living over there, I'm like, oh, this is something completely different. I want to check it out. So I could see it providing a unique appeal for people who live in the UK.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, and they get to go to Latin America, which is far away right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we had fun with the film, and then the film's got a lot of great actors in it. They're people like that I've acted with in movies over the years. And so it was really important to me to put together a great cast, especially like for my directorial debut. I was like, I want to work with really great actors. I want to develop fun, cool characters. I always love movies like Grand Budapest Hotel, that just have these like really like weird, wacky characters, and they're doing these extreme things, but it feels so like authentic because it's well developed and it's done by a great actor. And so that was important to me. So yeah, we've got people doing fun stuff in the movie, like Tom Arnold's in it, plays El Jade, the drug lord in Mexico, who's like head of the cartel down there.
He was hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, he's fun. He's super cool. I love him a lot. He's great. He played my dad on a TV show for 2 years when I was 10 on the Tom Show on WB. And so that's I reached out to him and was like, oh, drug lord, you play this, like, it'd be great. And he was like, all right, let's do it, like I'm game. Which is actually so funny because he just came out with a new TV show that he produced, and I have yet to watch it. I've got it on my list, but it's called The Drug Queen of Iowa, I believe, and it's about his sister being like a meth like kingpin in Iowa, and it's a limited series on Discovery Plus. So I just think it's so funny though, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like the movie just came out, so like he's drug king of like in like South America, she's in North America doing her drug queen stuff. So it's like the Arnolds are just taking over.
They've just got the world on lockdown.
Yeah, they got on lockdown. They're killing it out there. So that's probably the next show that I'll watch. But yeah, it's fun. So we got him. Devin Rattray is in the movie, which Devin's so funny. Devin's been in like, my gosh, like just so much. He started acting at a really young age too. He was Buzz in Home Alone, which is the older brother with the tarantula and like Wolf Buzz's girlfriend, all of that. But he's done so much stuff. He just did a new Steven Soderbergh movie that I don't know the title of it, but they were just out in LA filming it with Zoe Kravitz. And he was in Blue Ruin, which is an awesome independent film if you haven't seen it. Nebraska, that was nominated and won all the Oscars, the Alexander Payne film. He was on Mosaic, the TV show with Sharon Stone. He was like the second lead on that. Amazon TV show The Tick, the Natasha Lyonne film or TV show Russian Dolls on Netflix. He's in that too. We have Herbert Russell in the movie. Herbert's really funny. Herbert plays two characters in the movie. Which we were just trying to get wacky with that. We're like, let's make it weird. Let's go weird. I mean, I think that the film really, with independent films, you can kind of push the envelope. And so that was something like, with this is like, we were not necessarily like trying to do something like bioformula. We're like, let's push the envelope. Like, if we need to rewrite to fit the camelin that's now available, Like, let's do it. Let's rewrite it. If we need to, adjust because now we can get this like airplane crash scene in there, like, let's do it. And so we really kind of, kept trying to throw in whatever we could that would add, production value to it and just keep it strange. I think sometimes like with independent films, people try to make an independent film that's an exact copy of like a big budget film. And so they do it more formula. And I think that when you do that, you kind of lose like the spunk and like what makes an independent film like weird. You know what I mean? Like, people are independent film connoisseurs. Like, what makes it fun is that you can push the envelope. There is no studio head. And so I think that that's one thing that I think that we really captured in the film that's fun, is it's got that like quirky, element to it. But yeah.
Well, it reminds me of why I fell in love with movies in the first place, is that you can tell so many different stories through so many different ways, and you see actors portray so many different types of emotions. Like, don't get me wrong, I there's a lot of big budget movies that I like, but with indie movies, it kind of takes me back to why I liked movies in the first place, is that it's something you can just sit down and get lost in the world for 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever the runtime is. You could just get completely lost in the characters and in the story. So that's what I think I like the most about Hollywood.con, is that it reminded me a little bit of why I fell in love with movies in the first place.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, yeah, this movie was fun too. It was really special. I made it with my dad also, which is kind of cool.
Mhm.
So, like the Hollywood aspect in it, was based around different experiences and different characters and stuff that I had met over the years, which was a total blast. Like, I think one of my favorite lines in the movie is where Devin Rattray is on the phone and he's like the hotshot, producer, or whatever. And he's on the phone. He's like, Mom, I need more money. Can you send me more money? And then somebody walks in. He's like, oh, very soon, Beyonce. Well, you should put a ring on it. All right, baby, Snickum. See you later. And he like hangs
Yeah.
up. And I'm like, it's so LA, It's so LA. And then we had fun with this too, though, because then we opened it up to because I wanted to be bigger than that. I was like, okay, like satire in Hollywood, that's cool. Write what you know. So we'll mix all of that in. That'll be fun. And then my dad is a gemologist and works with gemstones. And so I had gone on a gem buying trip with him to Guatemala before. And when I went with him, we went back to this like small village and people were trying to sell him jade out of a tomb. You can look it up if you plug in. It's like a business card TV show type thing. If you plug in Gem Hunter Boorem online, it'll pop up on YouTube. You can see like there's a piece of them where they're trying to sell this enchanted piece, or not enchanted, sorry, this like jade that I would presume is cursed because it's from a tomb. And so one of the things that they were doing culturally is they, when someone passes away, then they place the jade in the mouth, and then as the soul leaves the body, it passes through the jade, and then somehow that like connects with, the afterlife or whatever, happens. And so they had this jade that was coming out of people's mouths that they were selling. And I was like, wait, so potentially like a soul passed through there? What? I was like, no, I think that's okay. Like, I don't think we need that. But so for the movie, that's where the enchanted jade came from, was from that jade buying experience in Guatemala, because that always stuck with me, because I was like, whoa, that's wacky. Like, that would be fun to put in. And then and then all the adventure stuff over there. He speaks fluent Spanish and travels around a lot over there. So but then we also both really, really like Romancing the Stone and like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, those are some of my like old time favorite films. So I was like, oh, like it'd be fun. It'd be fun to do a movie like that, So it's kind of like a little bit influenced off of that too.
Yeah, and it's cool in the sense that the story evolves into something much bigger over time. And not to get into too many spoilers, but what appealed to me about the movie was that I've always been fascinated by the almost movie within a movie type of storyline where someone's playing an aspiring actor or an actor that's trying to get some type of a role, because it's interesting to see how that's portrayed on screen, but then this evolves into something that's so much bigger. So you end up having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, you mentioning, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is one of the greatest adventure stories ever told on screen. Seeing elements of that, and you mentioning the camel earlier, that made me laugh out loud. Like I was watching the movie this morning and just seeing this camel just run across screen just was like, that's so wacky and so cool. I had so much fun watching the movie.
Awesome. I think too, also like in the beginning of the movie, Paige Howard's character, which she plays Veronica Lake, the hotshot producer woman. I think that kind of, sets up the film too, in the scene where she's talking about, like just going for things and getting out there and like being a predator and taking the opportunity. Like, so I think that's kind of sort of like a motto that comes into play with the movie too, is you have all these wacky characters that for better or worse, they go for the opportunity, and for some it turns out better, some turns out worse. But all of them are trying in their own way.
And sometimes that's the important thing.
Yeah. Well, I strongly believe that if you just, I think that if people have something, like if you want to make something, you want to make a movie or whatever it is that you want to do for a project, especially, if it's, writing or artistic or whatever, if you just start going for it and you start making something, you start trying, you can always streamline, perfect, and whatever else later on, but you get the ball rolling, and I think that's the most important thing for any sort of, endeavor that you could have, or any sort of like dream that you could have, is just to start going on it and don't wait, you know what I mean? Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for the perfect, for everything to be set up. Like you have to just start doing it.
And if it doesn't go smoothly the first time you try it, or the first couple of times you try it, it's okay. You just keep working at it and eventually you'll get it.
Exactly. But if you don't work at it, then nothing will happen.
Yeah, true.
You gotta just doing it.
It's just like this podcast, I've made several mistakes with it, but at times half the fun can be learning through failure and learning through mistakes, because I think it's the best way to learn.
Absolutely. Because you're always progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Even a failure at that point is still it's still progression. You're moving towards something. You're that much closer. I also think that there's something too. There's something magical about like if you get going into a project or something that you like or that you're passionate about, there's just some sort of innate feeling that other people can pick up too. And I feel like it naturally like makes people want to know more about it, get involved or help or something like that, because they hear that you're putting in the work. And if you're putting in the work on something, I think it inspires other people to do the same.
For sure, because it's like the sense of, you look at someone and you say, oh, well, they did it, so I should be able to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can't remember exactly where I heard this quote from, but, and I'm paraphrasing it a little bit when I say it, but someone said that they don't look at failure as failure. They look at it as opportunity. Where there's success, there's opportunity. So I think, a lot of people just, they get frozen with the fear of things not working, that they end up not doing it. But sometimes failure's fun. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is.
Sometimes it's not.
There's been plenty of times where it hasn't been, but sometimes, it's like I said, sometimes half the fun is learning through things going wrong, because then you learn what not to do.
You learn what not to do, but also, I don't know. I think it's all about just moving things, you just keep moving, keep doing stuff, and the energy on that. But it's you just go for it and make stuff. I hear a lot of people with films, because like to put a film together, a lot of like independent filmmakers and stuff, that they're, they want everything to be like absolutely perfect before they get started, and so they never get started, or they just look at there's too many walls, One thing that we did with this movie that was really cool too, that I think is a good thing for people who want to do independent filmmaking is we adjusted the script to things that were available to us. You know, like I was mentioning before, like if there's the camel or like these things that add to the story, or like my dad's a pilot, so you know we had the airplane in the movie, and you know he's hot wiring and all these things that we like know about. So if you write to things that you have or that you know, then it makes it, you know, that you have access to, it makes it easier to make things more dynamic than like, say, if you're going to make your independent film and it's about astronauts like in a spaceship somewhere, like unless you are able to build that out somehow, like it's just so much more complicated, you know? So I think that that's like an important, you know, thing that can be really helpful if you're trying to put together your own movie is okay. So like, you know, what can I do that would be dynamic, but that I like, you know, can gather up, and wouldn't be too crazy.
Well, you definitely use the resources that you have access to, because if you have something that you think might be really cool, you know, don't be afraid to use it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And get everybody that you know, that you respect, that's awesome, get them involved. Every one of them. Every one of them. This movie, I mean, the movies has those actors I mentioned, which are awesome, and a lot more actors that are great. Billy Bob Thornton does a cameo in the movie and gave us, you know, the Boxmasters band, which is him with a great group of guys. They gave us a couple of songs. They've got the cameo in the movie, so that's fun. Lendl Black, our composer, he's won a couple of Emmys for his work. He writes orchestra music for Yamaha instruments. We have a great editor, Anna Crane, who did our editing on the film. And then for a polishing pass on the film, we had Kevin Ross, who has Emmys for Stranger Things. He was on Californication. He was on Shameless. So we had him come through for the editing and just like look at things, critique things. So, I mean, you know, when you have access to people that you respect, that you think are great artists, like get them involved, try to grab them as much as you can. Cause that was another thing with this is people were excited. They liked the project and, you know, they're passionate about it. And I think they could tell that I was passionate about it. So I just, you know, snagged them. I was like, get in here, get in here, come be a part of this. We had a family friend who is a Foley artist, and he's done over 200 movies. Like he did The Professional, the Natalie Portman movie, where she has the little plant, like her first movie. It's also called like Leon. He came over from France, and we worked on the Foley together. He did the Foley for like 10 days in the studio out here in California, and he does it all by hand. And he's just like this crazy, amazing artist who he, you know, was like, well, what if, because it's comedy and it's slapstick, like what if we overemphasize all of the Foley sounds? Which Foley, for anyone listening who doesn't know, Foley are practical sounds. So Foley's like, if someone's walking, like the footsteps are redone. If someone sits in the chair, that's like a different motion sound. If someone like our hotshot producer Devin, he's like talking, he's got all these chains, and so we like made it so that they jingle every time he moves. Paige Howard, when she's in the scene with me in the beginning, where she's moving closer to me to tell me this aggressive thing about how you have to go for opportunities, as she moves over, we made her chair like just like super like squeak, the couch is moving, like just like too much. And so that was like another character and flavor that we added into the film, just to give it like another sort of fun artesian layer, you know, and add more artistry in there. The color correction on the film, we had this one color correction friend who is awesome. He did Die Hard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like one of my all-time favorite movies. And so we were really specific with the color correction in the film too. So like when you're in Los Angeles and you're in Hollywood, everything is blue and cool tones. And then when you get to Latin America, everything is warm and more saturated in red tones. And we did that so that when you watch the movie and you're going back and forth between the two storylines, like the two different locations, subconsciously you pick up on where you are because of those color schemes. And so, yeah, so we developed that out. And that's an interesting thing too, because when you do the color correction with stuff like that, you have to start thinking about that from the very beginning when you're putting the sets together and the locations, because if you want to, and like the actor's wardrobe as well, because if you want to pull up those like cool or those blue tones, say for like the section we were in Los Angeles, if you dressed all the actors in reds and warm colors, or you had like, you know, maybe like a terracotta wall and that kind of stuff, when you go to make them these cool and blue tones, it'll be a lot harder and won't come out like you want it to, because there's nothing to really kind of pull up from that. And then the same for like, you know, the Latin America, if you you know, didn't think about that beforehand. So those are all sort of you know, interesting discussions to have about you know, these like color schemes and stuff before you make the movie too.
For sure. No, and that's actually really enlightening to know, especially for those who, you know, are aspiring filmmakers who are even currently working in film. You know, the little details like that are things that you might not even think about when you're coming up with, you know, your plan or whatever the case may be. So, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah, pre-production,
Yep.
yeah, trying to like think about it all. Yeah, I mean, yeah, one of the big things on this was just like finding people that I respect and like you know, and getting their input on it. I think you know, like for directing stuff, it's cool because you're involved from the very beginning and to the very end of the film, you know. And like on this, I was involved with the distribution on it. And so you know, and you're one of the first people there in the morning, last one to ever leave. But you know, I always think that if you bring on great people, like with the actors and these different you know, crew members I was just talking about, then, you know, as a director, you have to try to make sure everyone's always on the same page for the narrative so that it matches, you know, or the same theme so that it matches with the story you're trying to tell. But also just let these people do what they do. You know, if you hire people that are great at what they do, I don't try to like micromanage them at all. I'm like, you're awesome. Like, okay, we'll make sure that everybody's on the same page, but that's really cool. And yeah, I like the collaboration of it all.
It's my favorite part of filmmaking is the collaboration. I've said this ad nauseum, so the listeners are probably tired of me saying it, but the best thing about film is when you can gather a group of people. They might be from different parts of the world. They might have different, you know, opinions on things. They might disagree on 9 out of 10 things they would talk about, but they all come together for this one common goal of making a film, whether it's a short or a feature, because both are extremely demanding and a lot of work, but there's no greater reward than seeing the final product done.
For sure, absolutely. It's an interesting medium too because it has so many layers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've got the yeah, you've got the visual layer, you have the sound, like it's an immersive art form with all these different layers. And what you're talking about, like with a whole group coming together, a whole group of artists, um, it's hard to find another art piece where you have that many completely different artists that do different things, you know, that come together collectively to make one thing. That's an immersive experience. Like it's a crazy art form. It's very cool.
And that's why I say, you know, no disrespect to sculptors or painters. That's why I consider film to be the greatest art form that there is, because of the immense time that you put into it. And there's so many different layers, so many different areas of film that you work in. That's why I look at film as just being, you know, so impressive. Like every film to me is a miracle in a way because of the work that it takes to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was interesting for this one as well, because since it was an independent film and we had all these working actors on it, we had to schedule around their schedules because they're all in these like different projects and different commitments and TV show commitments. And so it took a little bit longer to film because of that. And then, just being involved in so many different sections of the crew too, with these different locations, and also, with being an independent film, like I wanted to film in the Yuma sand dunes, but the Yuma sand dunes, you can only film in and have that really cool, pristine look when it's extremely hot. So like if you go there other times of the year, the people are doing the off-roading, they're doing the ATVs, all of that. So to have that sort of just vast, like, wow, striking untouched sand dune look, you have to go there in the heat. So we had to wait for that time period and then go out there, and we had everything overheating, and like it was just funny. It was funny trying to douse everyone in sunscreen.
That's fantastic. But as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask you, do you have any other projects that you're working on that you like to talk about?
I do. I've got a lot of stuff in the works. I'm not sure which one I'm directly going to roll in next, because it's interesting with the pandemic right now. It's sort of moved things around. Also, it's right now with filming, it's still kind of the pods going on with people separated. But during the pandemic, I was actually able to shoot a music video that's really awesome that everyone should check out. It's called, the song is Catch Me If You Can. The artist is Travis Tidwell, which is, the last name is spelled like Didwell. The music video went up on Country Music Television. And then just last week, we found out it's nominated for Music Video of the Year for the Josie Awards, which from my understanding is the largest independent music awards. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, I'm excited about that. So, and hopefully get to, like the pandemic, everything stays open, hopefully get to go to the award show in Tennessee in September.
That's fantastic. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. And then beyond that, there's a series of educational children's films that I've been putting together. And so I've got those written out. And so we're just figuring out about the exact filming schedule on that country music documentary, which will probably be the next one that I move into, because it's a little bit more contained with like the archive footage and then like the more like singular interviews of people's stories. So that'll probably be the next one. That'll be the easiest to film. And then I've got a huge historical piece that I'm really excited about. That one's like a really big thing to film. So we'll see. Right now with the pandemic, it's that one's like a boy in the 1920s jumping trains traveling south.
Oh, that sounds actually really cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. It's based off of a true story, historical piece, like, and just amazing, heartfelt characters in there as he travels to each one of these new locations and learns something about himself or learns something about people, and like progressively grows up through the process.
That sounds really interesting. I love historical pieces like that. And plus it being a true story is even more appealing. But it sounds like you've got like a variety of stuff in the works, which is always fun.
Yeah, I'm interested in everything. I like everything. I stay focused. I'm aware to stay focused on, specific things so I can accomplish stuff, but my interests vary so much.
That's great though. I mean, it's always something to do if that's the case.
Yeah. It's true. I don't get bored.
No, that's good. That's very good though. And last thing I wanted to ask you before we get out of here, do you have a website or social media you'd like to plug so the listeners can follow you?
Yeah. So on all the social media platforms is just under my name, which is Mika Boorem. And then I've got a website, which is just also under that, Mika.com. And for the movie, you can check out some really fun stuff. So the movie Hollywood.con is on Amazon. And we've got some fun stuff up on our website, which is Hollywood.con.net. And there's behind the scenes photos, all of that. Also, because not everyone gets the name. So the movie's called Hollywood.con because it's about con artists in Hollywood making a movie. So we were just trying to think of something. We're like, what's a different name when you plug it in online that doesn't get mixed up with anything else? And so we're like, okay, we love it. It's weird. We can do it.
And it makes perfect sense too. And it just, I think throwing the dot in there, like when I saw the title for the first time, I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then after watching the movie, I'm like, it makes total sense.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, I very much enjoyed it. And Mika, thank you so much for taking the time to do the show. This was great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Mika Boorem for that awesome conversation. Be sure to check out Hollywood.con on Amazon Prime and follow her on social media to find out what she'll be up to next. For next week's show, I'll be chatting with actor Jared Bankins. He'll be coming on the show to talk about his latest film, We All Think We're Special, and he also appeared in the Venom movie a couple of years ago. So he's got some great stories about how he got attached to that movie and his time making it, as well as some other projects that he's worked on. Really fun conversation. Be sure to come back next week for that really fun episode. And speaking of Marvel, you all know Venom. He's a Marvel character. It's the return of the top 5 list. And as voted on by you, the Patreon subscribers, we'll be doing top 5 post-credit scenes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All the Marvel-related lists have been really difficult to do. I can't imagine that this is going to be any different. Be sure to check out my social media. I'll be posting a thread where you can all leave your list, and I will read them on the show next week. But until then, you can check out past episodes of this show on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast for free. Just search for The Derek Diamond Experience. And if you could, please leave a review. The more reviews I get, the more visible I become to the podcasting public. You can also follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at DDiamondPodcast. I'm also on Patreon at patreon.com/DDiamondPodcast. And of course, thank you to my close friends, the Unicorn Wranglers, for providing the theme music for the podcast. You can check out all their music on Apple Music, Google Play, and Spotify. That's going to do it for this week's show, so enjoy the rest of your week. Have a safe and fun weekend. Thank you for tuning in to another awesome episode of the Derek Diamond Experience. I'm your host, Derek Diamond, and we'll see you guys back here next Thursday.